Remember those Friday nights cruising down to the local video store?
Yeah.
The smell of popcorn hitting you as you walk through the door?
Mm-hmm.
Shelves stacked high with those colorful VHS tapes,
Yeah.
promising an evening of escape.
Absolutely. It's a sensory experience that's almost lost today, isn't it? That feeling of possibility as you scan those covers.
Exactly. And for many of us, it's a direct line back to our younger selves.
Right.
A time when movie nights felt like an event.
Yeah?
Well, two film buffs, Millie DeRico and Casey O'Brien,
Mm-hmm.
are tapping into that nostalgia with their podcast, Dear Movies, I Love You.
Okay.
You sent us this interview they did on another podcast, My Favorite Murder,
Uh-huh.
and it's got me really intrigued.
And what's so refreshing is how they approach the topic. They're
Mhm.
not trying to be film critics
Right.
or offer highbrow analysis.
Yeah.
They describe it as a sincere celebration of film and film culture.
It's about that emotional connection we forge with movies.
Yes.
Those films that become touchstones in our lives.
Right.
And they've really cultivated a specific vibe.
Okay.
Inviting, fun, cute are the words they used.
It's smart, really.
Yeah.
They're making it clear up front that this isn't a space for judgment or snobbery,
Right.
which can be so off-putting, especially if you're just discovering your love for film.
And it really comes through in their personalities.
Oh, yeah.
Millie, a film programmer, historian, and writer,
Mm-hmm.
brings this incredible depth of knowledge to the table.
Yeah.
But she wears it lightly, doesn't she?
Yeah.
There's a real passion there, a
Mm.
desire to share that love with others.
It's not just academic for her. It's about the experience,
Right.
the emotional impact.
Yeah.
And then you have Casey,
Yeah.
a filmmaker and self-described lover of movies,
Right.
who injects this playful humor and enthusiasm into the mix.
Like that bit where he jokes about being the film himbo.
Exactly. He embraces the idea of making the conversation accessible and fun, even poking fun at himself in the process.
Right.
It's refreshing because he clearly knows his stuff, but he doesn't take himself too seriously.
And it's clear there's a genuine friendship and respect between them.
Absolutely.
Even when they disagree on certain films,
Right.
they both have this love for both highbrow and lowbrow cinema,
Yeah.
which I think makes the podcast feel very welcoming to a diverse audience.
And that ties into their idea of gateway films, which is so interesting.
Okay.
Millie, for instance, suggests starting with 90s American indie films.
Now, for listeners who might not be familiar with that era of indie film,
Good point. Indie, short for independent, refers to films made outside the traditional studio system, often with smaller budgets and a focus on character-driven stories.
Right.
Jarmusch, in particular, is known for his minimalist style,
Mm.
his deadpan humor,
Yeah.
and his exploration of outsider characters.
Right.
So Stranger Than Paradise, with its black and white cinematography and quirky characters,
Yeah.
could be a great introduction to that aesthetic.
It's a way to expand your palette, so to speak. And what about Casey? What are his gateway film suggestions?
He recommends tracing Paul Thomas Anderson's career,
Okay.
starting with Boogie Nights,
Right.
a vibrant, energetic film set in the 1970s porn industry,
Mhm.
and then moving on to something like There Will Be Blood,
Okay.
a much darker and more epic film.
Right.
It's a fascinating way to see how a director's style and themes evolve over time.
They also talk about Kubrick.
Yes.
Mhm.
Millie suggests The Shining as a way to bridge the gap between horror and art house cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Kubrick's meticulous visuals and psychological depth elevate the genre,
Okay.
making it a good entry point for those who might be intimidated by horror.
I see your point.
Though I might argue there are other more accessible films for dipping your toes into horror.
Kubrick can be pretty intense.
But it's a testament to Millie and Casey's approach.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to challenge their listeners,
Right.
to encourage them to step outside their comfort zones.
And they also emphasize those personal rituals that surround our movie watching experiences.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the film itself.
Right.
It's about how we create those moments of escape.
Like their go-to movie snacks, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Millie loves the classic combo of popcorn and cherry Coke,
Which I have to say is a timeless pairing.
while Casey opts for popcorn mixed with peanut M&Ms
Okay.
or an icy Coke.
And it's fascinating because their choices actually reflect their personalities, don't you think?
Yeah,
Millie's choice is classic, a bit nostalgic,
right.
while Casey's is a bit more playful and expected.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
It shows how these seemingly small details can reveal a lot about our individual approaches to movie watching.
That's a great observation.
And they don't shy away from sharing those sometimes disastrous movie-going experiences.
Right.
Remember Millie's story about the firecracker incident during a screening of Furiosa?
Oh, yes. some rowdy teenagers
Mhm.
in a theater in Atlanta, apparently notorious for that kind of behavior.
It's a reminder that those shared cinematic experiences,
Yeah.
even when they go awry, contribute to our overall love for film.
It's those unexpected moments,
Right.
those shared cringes or laughs that become part of our own personal movie-going lore.
Speaking of unexpected moments, Casey has a story about confronting an elderly couple who were sitting in his reserved seats,
Oh, right.
which speaks to how much these rituals, like choosing our seats ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
can impact our enjoyment of the film.
It's about claiming that space,
Exactly.
creating the optimal environment for immersion.
And then there's their trip down memory lane to the golden age of video stores.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those hours spent browsing those shelves,
Oh.
debating which VHS to rent?
And they even reminisce about specific VHS covers that have stuck with them over the years.
Millie, being drawn to horror,
Right.
mentions Happy Birthday to Me
Yeah.
and Dario Argento's Creepers.
Yes.
She's fascinated by how those visuals, particularly in the horror genre,
Yeah.
could evoke such a visceral reaction,
Right.
sparking both curiosity and fear.
It's interesting how those visuals played such a crucial role in our movie choices back then.
Absolutely.
Millie and Casey actually lament the decline of those hand-drawn,
Right.
often posed VHS covers.
Yeah.
They argue there was a real art to them,
Hmm.
a way of capturing the essence of the film that modern Photoshop posters often lack.
It speaks to this idea of visual literacy,
Okay.
which they touch on in the interview.
Right.
They believe that being able to decipher those visual cues,
Yes.
whether it's a VHS cover or a director's cinematic language,
Mhm.
is key to unlocking a deeper appreciation for film.
It's about understanding how those images work on us,
Right.
how they evoke emotions and tell a story even before the film begins.
And it's something they do really well in their own podcast.
Yeah.
They're constantly painting pictures with their words, describing scenes and visuals in such detail.
They understand that a podcast about movies can't just be about talking at people.
Right.
It has to evoke that same sense of visual wonder.
Which brings us back to that core element of their podcast,
Right.
their contagious enthusiasm.
They're so clearly in love with film
Yeah.
and makes you want to revisit your own favorites or discover new ones.
It's like they're giving you permission to be unabashedly excited about movies,
Right.
regardless of what's considered cool or highbrow. And in a world that can feel increasingly cynical,
Yeah.
that kind of genuine enthusiasm is a breath of fresh air.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
As you listen to Millie and Casey, think about your own movie-going experiences.
Right.
What are those films that transport you back to a specific time or feeling?
Hmm.
What are those rituals that enhance your enjoyment of a film?
And beyond that, think about how those early experiences,
Yeah.
those first encounters with certain films or genres
Mm-hmm.
have shaped your relationship with cinema today.
What are those gateway films that opened up new worlds for you? That
Yeah.
made you fall in love with the magic of movies?
We'll explore those ideas further as we continue our deep dive into Dear Movies, I Love You. One of the things that really struck me about Millie and Casey was their honesty about their own insecurities.
Yeah.
Like, who hasn't worried about being perceived as a film snob?
It's disarming, isn't it?
Right.
Especially coming from someone like Casey, who clearly has a deep knowledge of film.
Yeah.
He jokes about Millie reaching down into the gutter to pull him out and make him a podcast star.
But it's that self-awareness that makes them so relatable.
Right.
And it ties into their larger point about fostering a more inclusive and welcoming film culture.
Remember how Millie said she'd rather hear someone passionately defend a movie she dislikes than just tear it down?
It's a fantastic perspective.
Right.
It's about appreciating different tastes and perspectives,
Yeah.
recognizing that our personal connections to films are subjective.
And it's a great reminder for all of us, isn't it? Especially in today's online world, where it's so easy to get caught up in negativity and judgment. Millie and Casey are advocating for a more generous and open-minded approach to film discussion.
And they extend that generosity to exploring the evolution of film culture itself,
Yes.
acknowledging both the joys and the losses.
Right.
Their conversation about the decline of video stores is particularly poignant.
Yes, they both express a real sense of nostalgia for those spaces,
Right.
for that sense of community and discovery that they offer.
Yeah.
Remember those handwritten staff recommendations you'd find tucked into the shelves?
It was like having a conversation with a fellow film lover,
Yeah,
even if you never met them face to face.
exactly.
And there's a tactile element to it, too.
Yeah.
Flipping through those VHS covers,
Yeah.
feeling the weight of the box in your hand.
It was a ritual in itself. And they contrast that very effectively with the rise of streaming services.
Right.
On the one hand, we now have access to an incredible library of films at our fingertips.
But on the other hand, we've lost something of that shared experience, that sense of exploration and serendipity.
Think about it. You used to have to actively seek out those hidden gems.
Right.
Rely on word of mouth or those staff picks.
Yeah.
Now algorithms try to predict what we want, which can be convenient, but it also narrows our exposure.
It's like we're trading that sense of communal discovery for personalized recommendations.
Right.
Which can feel isolating in a way.
And that loss extends to the visuals, too.
Right.
Which ties back to their point about VHS nostalgia.
Remember how they lamented the decline of those hand-drawn, posed movie posters?
Yeah.
They argue that those covers often captured the spirit of the film in a way that modern Photoshop posters just don't. There was an artistry to them, a boldness that you don't often see today.
And they're not just being sentimental. They believe that those visuals played a key role in shaping our relationship with movies, sparking our imaginations and drawing us into those worlds.
Think about those iconic covers, the stylized artwork of Star Wars.
Yes.
The haunting image of Reagan from The Exorcist. The stark silhouette of the Terminator.
Yeah.
Those images became synonymous with the films themselves, part of our collective cultural memory.
And Milley and Casey argue that those covers cultivated a sense of visual literacy.
Right.
Training us to read those visual cues and decipher the mood and genre of a film at a glance. Do you think we're losing that with the more generic, often digitally created posters of today?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Are we becoming less attuned to those subtle visual details, less able to decode the language of cinema?
It's something to consider.
Right.
And it highlights a broader point that Milley and Casey make about the importance of film education.
Okay.
About developing a critical eye for those elements that elevate a film from mere entertainment to art.
And they model that beautifully in their own podcast, don't they?
They do.
The way they describe scenes.
Yeah.
The way they analyze directorial choices.
Yeah.
It's like they're taking you inside the filmmaking process.
They understand that a podcast about movies can't just be about plot summaries or opinions. Right. Has to engage the senses, evoke those same emotions and visual experiences that we get from watching a film.
And that, I think, is what makes Dear Movies, I Love You so special.
Yeah.
It's not just a show about movies.
Right.
It's an invitation to explore the deeper meaning and impact that film has on our lives.
They tap into that shared love for cinema, reminding us of the power of film to connect us, to inspire us, and to transport us to other worlds.
And they do it with a warmth and enthusiasm that's contagious.
Absolutely.
You can't help but get swept up in their passion and start reminiscing about your own favorite films and movie-going moments.
They remind us that it's okay to be unabashedly enthusiastic about movies, to geek out over those details that resonate with us, and to celebrate those films that have shaped our lives.
And remember they even asked about dream guests?
Oh, yeah.
Keanu Reeves, naturally.
Of course.
It seems like everyone wants to chat with Keanu these days.
Yeah.
But Milley also mentioned Martin Scorsese, which I think is a brilliant choice.
He's such an icon.
Right.
A true master of cinema.
But he's also known for his infectious love of film.
Absolutely.
His willingness to talk for hours about the technical and artistic aspects of filmmaking.
Imagine those conversations.
Right.
The stories, the insights, the sheer depth of knowledge.
It would be a true masterclass in film appreciation.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the potential of this podcast to bridge generations and perspectives, to bring together those established voices like Scorsese with up-and-coming film enthusiasts like Milley and Casey.
You know, as we're talking about their enthusiasm,
Yeah.
it reminds me of their discussion about movie snacks.
Oh, right.
It's such a simple detail,
Yeah,
but it speaks volumes about their personalities and their approach to film.
absolutely. Popcorn and cherry Coke for Milley.
Yeah. Classic, timeless, a bit nostalgic, just like her taste in films.
And Casey's peanut M&M popcorn mix.
It's playful, a bit unexpected. Just like his suggestions of tracing a director's career or diving into the world of 70s porn with Boogie Nights.
It highlights how those personal rituals, even something as simple as our snack choices,
Yeah.
can enhance our movie watching experience and reflect our individual personalities.
It's making me rethink my own movie snack game.
Me too.
Maybe we need a deep dive episode dedicated to the art of movie snack pairing.
Now there's an idea.
Yeah.
But perhaps we should save that for another time.
Right.
For now, Let's get back to Millie and Casey's central question.
Okay.
That thought-provoking prompt they left us with.
Oh, yes, that's a good one.
They asked, when you picture yourself back in that video store, what's the first VHS or DVD cover that pops into your mind?
It's such a simple question, but it unlocks so much.
Right.
It transports you right back to that moment of browsing the shelves, being drawn to a particular image, that feeling of anticipation before you even hit play.
It's like a time machine back to our younger selves, to those early experiences that shaped our love for movies.
And it reminds us that sometimes a single powerful image can spark our imagination and ignite a lifelong passion.
Right.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I encourage you to take a moment to really visualize that video store.
Right.
What VHS or DVD cover jumps out at you?
Yeah.
What memories or emotions does it evoke? And what does that tell you about your own journey as a film lover?
Keep those thoughts in mind as we continue our exploration of Dear Movies, I Love You.
Because Millie and Casey have even more insights to share about why we fall in love with films and how those cinematic love stories continue to shape us.
It's amazing how those seemingly insignificant details, a VHS cover,
Right.
a movie snack combo,
Yeah.
can evoke such powerful memories and emotions.
It speaks to how deeply ingrained movies are in our personal histories.
Right.
They become woven into the fabric of our lives, marking moments in time, reflecting who we were and who we are becoming.
And Millie and Casey aren't afraid to delve into those sometimes awkward or embarrassing moments that shape our relationship with film.
Right.
Like Millie's story about sneaking into the X-rated section of the video store as a kid.
Oh, that's classic.
Right.
It's something a lot of us can probably relate to, right? That forbidden fruit appeal.
Yeah.
The thrill of exploring something outside our comfort zones.
And the fact that she still remembers the title,
I know.
Naked with Shoes On, is just too funny.
It highlights the power of those early encounters with film.
Right.
How they can leave a lasting impression on us. And there's a certain vulnerability in sharing those stories.
Yeah.
A willingness to laugh at ourselves.
Right.
And acknowledge those formative experiences, even the ones that might make us cringe a bit now.
It creates this sense of connection, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like we're all in on the joke.
Yeah.
Sharing those awkward but ultimately humanizing moments that make us who we are.
It disarms the listener and makes Millie and Casey feel more relatable, more like friends sharing stories rather than experts dictating opinions.
Right.
And that, I think, is a big part of why their podcast resonates with people.
It's that sense of authenticity and camaraderie that draws us in, inviting us to participate in this larger conversation about our shared love for movies.
And their discussion about gateway films is a great example of how they facilitate that conversation.
Yeah, their recommendations are so diverse.
Right.
Spanning different genres, decades, and styles.
They mention 90s American indie films, like we discussed earlier.
Right.
But also Kubrick, early Wes Anderson, even suggesting tracing the career trajectory of a director like Paul Thomas Anderson.
It shows the breadth of their own cinematic knowledge and their desire to expose listeners to a wide range of film experiences.
And it's not about creating a list of must-see films or dictating taste.
Right.
It's about providing a starting point, a jumping-off point for exploration.
They're essentially curating a film education, guiding listeners through different genres and styles, helping them develop a more critical and appreciative eye.
And their enthusiasm for each recommendation is contagious, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You can practically hear them beaming through the microphone as they describe those films that sparked their own love for cinema.
It makes you want to revisit those films yourself.
Right.
To experience them anew through Millie and Casey's eyes.
And that, I think, is the ultimate goal of Dear Movies, I Love You, to reignite that passion for film.
Yeah.
To remind us of why we fell in love with movies in the first place.
They're essentially saying, come join us on this journey of discovery.
Right.
Let's explore these worlds together.
Yeah.
Let's share our stories and our passions. And let's celebrate the magic of movies in all its forms.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Dear Movies, I Love You, I'm curious, what resonated most with you?
Was it those personal anecdotes, the shared memories of video stores, and those early cinematic encounters?
Or perhaps it was their thoughtful discussion about the evolution of film culture and the importance of visual literacy?
Whatever stood out, I hope this conversation has inspired you to reconnect with your own love for movies.
Absolutely.
To revisit those favorites and maybe even discover some new cinematic gems along the way.
Then perhaps like Millie and Casey, you'll find yourself drawn back to that metaphorical video store.
Yeah.
Browsing those shelves with fresh eyes, eager to experience the stories that I made.
Because, as they've shown us, the love for movies is a journey of discovery.
Right.
A lifelong adventure filled with laughter, tears, and those unforgettable moments that stay with us long after the credits roll.